Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Robert with oddrandomthoughts.com, and this is our third video in the screen print series in learning how to do color separations in order to prepare your artwork for screen output. So as we learned in the first video, we learned how to make a template one we can use to size our artwork on, and we'll get to that here in just a little bit. We're going to be using that. And we also created our swatch libraries that has all of our colors, our available colors that we can use on our artwork. So in this video, we're going to go ahead and start doing some color separating. Now I put together this little piece of art here real quick for us so we'd have something to work on, and it's got a little bit of everything in it. It has some process colors, something that you will probably have to deal with. It's got some weathering, and it even has some gradient in it. So we're going to learn how to separate this properly so we can print some good screens and print some good shirts. So let's go ahead and get started here. The first thing that I would do, and I recommend you do, is go to your layers. And now let me start off by adding, if you work in a print shop, especially one of any size that does a good bit of business, then you probably have a separate art department that creates the artwork for you. And like where I work, we have a full art department that creates all of our art, and I work in pre-press as a output technician, and my sole job is to take the artwork that's produced and separate it into color plates and print it to our screen department so they can image it on the screens. And it sounds pretty simple, but it's really not, because I have to go through the artwork, check for process colors, make sure everything is created print friendly, because even though the artwork looks good on paper or on the screen, it may not always translate to a screen and to print the way it looks on your monitor or on a piece of paper. So that's where my job comes in, is to make sure everything is print friendly. So first thing that I would do is come over here. I would download the artwork and then unlock my shirt color, the garment here. Then I'll just click on it and hit E for my transform tool and go ahead and bring the edges in. Now the reason I do that is so I have a reference point to the furthest outside edges of the art. That way when I go to put it in my template, I can easily size it to these edges, and then I know that I've got everything sized correctly. Now you can take your artwork without the shirt color, but if you have strokes or something that's not outlined, then you're going to go past your margins. So using the shirt color for this is a good way to do it. So now that I have that, before I transfer this artwork to the template, I find that it's easier to go ahead and check through my colors. Now, the reason I made this black and white is because black and white are two of the most important colors as far as finding process colors. If there are process colors, and I'll kind of explain what a process color is. Like what you see here in the color panel, this is a process. Normally when you hear process, you think of a 4-color process, which is your CMYK, your cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So if a swatch is a process color, that means that it is made up of that 4-color process. Now when you convert a process swatch to a spot color swatch, you're giving it one color that you can control a percentage from 0 to 100% of that color. So you're actually, instead of having to make up that color with the 4-color process, you have an actual color in one swatch. So that's something you want to look out for, because if you go to print your design and you have process colors in there, then you're going to have each one of these printing a plate. You'll have your cyan, magenta, yellow, and black all printing a plate, and then you'll have a plate printing for each of your color swatches, your spot color swatches too. So, and you can deselect those when you print, but it might be a vital part of the artwork and you don't want to lose any of it. So it's a good idea to go through, make sure everything in the artwork is colored with a spot color swatch. So, and that's why I left this one with quite a bit of process color. Now, the reason black and white is so important is because it's the two that you'll find the most often. So what you'd want to do is come over here and just double click on your black swatch, and let's just bring the black slider down to 29, and we'll hit OK. Okay, so you see some of this black turned with that swatch. So that means everything that's black here that did not change to this gray color when we move that slider down is a process color. So that's not going to work. We need to go through and make sure all this black is colored. So we'll come in here with our direct select tool. We'll click on this. As you can see, it's process, so we'll color it with the swatch. Then if you hit Control 3, that'll hide that layer. We'll go up here. We see we have a black stroke that's processed, so we'll turn it and hide it with Control 3. Then you see up here I created this text in an envelope. So what we want to do in order to, this is non-editable like it is, one thing you can do is hit Control Shift and the letter P, and that will allow you to edit the contents of that envelope. Something I like to do before I separate, just to make sure nothing shifts and everything stays true, is I'll go ahead and expand it. You can go up to Object and Expand, do your fill in your object, and now you can go through these layers individually. If you have like a Gaussian blur or some gradients, some things like that, you don't want to necessarily expand those, especially if they have like a multiply attribute on them or something, because then it won't print properly. It won't translate through the rip like you want it to. So be careful when you use expand. It's not always something you want to do. Normally creating outlines on your text is a very good idea, but as far as expanding, you'll kind of learn as you go what you can and can't expand without messing something up between the rips. So let's go ahead and go through these layers here. Another thing I will do is turn the white swatch to a cyan so I can see what's colored white and what isn't. So we need to go through here, and we'll select all the same fill on this process white, and we'll color it. Control 3 to hide, and then we'll select all the same fill and stroke. So all the fill is colored, but if we go to our stroke, we see it's a process, so we need to color that black. Then we'll hide that layer. All of that is colored. We see we have some white here, so we need to color that. We'll go ahead and hide what is colored. Okay, there's our text. It is not colored, so we'll color it. And our garment is also not colored. Now you can take the stroke off of the garment. Okay, then we have our gradients down here. So you want to click on a section of the gradient, and you can go to select same fill. If these gradients are at the same percentage it will select all the ones that are the same. But unfortunately, these are all different gradients. So what I want to do, I can see that neither the white nor the black is colored. So I'll just drag my white down here to that gradient, drag my black. Okay, that one's colored. Then I'll go to the next one, and I'll do that. And I will do that for all of these gradients. Make sure they're colored. Okay, there's another one that has the black colored, but the white is not, so we'll color it. And then the main portion of our banner, the blacks are both colored on both ends, but the white isn't, so we'll color that. And remember, we're hitting Control-3 to hide all these layers as we go through them. So we'll color this white. And these are all, the gradient sliders are set at different percentages, so we'll have to go through them one at a time. Okay, now we have a little speck there, and see, now that would get you. If you didn't go through all these layers, you'd go over and over and over and still not find your process colors. So it's a good idea to do it this way. Okay, now we can hit Control-A to select all, and as you see, there's a little spot down here. So we want to get in on that and see what that is. Okay, we'll need to color that one too, and we'll hide that. And Control-A, we have nothing left on the artboard, so hit Control-Alt and the number 3, and that will reveal everything. So now that we know everything is colored, we can go back and change these back to their true color. White, I usually leave it at 100% cyan. That way it's easily seen, and you know there's no process colors. It's not going to matter when you print it to your RIP or to a PostScript file or to a PDF or whatever you're printing to. It's still going to come out as black. So unless you're printing on paper, of course. But okay, so now we've got the gradients. We've got everything colored. So let's take a look at this. We can see there's weathering on it. But if we hide our shirt color, it's going all the way through. And you'll notice that this is grouped together all in one group. So what we'll do is we'll come down and look at the appearance, go to the opacity. We can see that it's masked. So that weathering is masked over that object. So what we'll do is we can either hit release here, or you can hit Control-Shift and the letter G, and that will ungroup that mask and reveal the weathering. Okay, so let's click on it and see it's not colored. So we want to be sure the weathering is colored the same as the shirt. So when we print our white, which in this case that will be the only color that prints because the black is our shirt color, when we print the white, then this weathering will show through because this will be the same as the black. So that's a good thing. So now everything's ready. So let's go ahead and select everything. First we'll go ahead and create outlines on this text down here. So just hit Control and the letter O to create outlines. Then select it all and Control-X to cut it from the page. And then we'll go to our template that we created. Wherever you saved it at, you can go to File and open that template, and then we'll paste the artwork in that template. Now, we'll get to this in a future video, but I like to use actions. I've recorded a whole list of actions here that I use that have shortcut keys. So instead of going through all these menus, I can just hit Control-Shift and my F key for whatever function I want, and it'll do several steps in a row. So it saves me a lot of time. So I'm just going to hit my shortcut to open my template here. Okay, now since we have this weathering around here, we want to make sure that we're lining up the artwork in the corner of our template. So we'll just drag it up there, hit the letter S, and we'll put an anchor right there in the corner. Then hold Shift to keep the proportions constrained, and click and hold and just drag your artwork up. Okay, so now we can see our right margin. So we'll hold Shift again and drag horizontally or at an angle here until we hit that mark, and then release Shift. Okay, so now our artwork is sized. It's at 12 inches wide, and it's just almost 14 inches tall, as you can see here by the margin. Okay, and our registration marks, remember they're locked down, so we'll hit Control Alt and the number 2 to release that. Hit the letter E to transform, hold Shift and just drag it up a little bit. Okay, and then Control 2 to lock it down again. Now, at my job, I don't use registration marks. They don't get printed to the actual screen because we use an iJet or a STE system that images kind of like a printer, but it prints with wax, and of course you have the light sensitive emulsion. It's then exposed and rinsed, but those machines are so accurate that you can pop the screens in the press and they practically line up on first shot. Sometimes the printer may have to adjust the screen just a tad, but for the most part they don't need registration marks, so we normally hide those. So I'll just hide them, but if you need them, just leave them up there and lock them down. Now up here you can see this weathering is on top of our labels, and we talked about that in the last video. So what we'll do is we'll select all of our artwork. We'll come over here to layers and drag that selection down to the colors layer, and that puts our registration and our labels on top, so they're no longer colored with or covered with the weathering, because you don't want that to come out on the screen. It'll be hard to read the label. So we'll come up here and double click where it says color, and we'll just call that white, and with the label selected, color it with your swatch. So that will allow that label to print out on the white screen when it prints. Now in this case, and everybody may not do it this way, but what we do is anytime we have gradients like this where it's white to a shirt color gradient, then you don't want to print that white twice. Say you print the first stroke in a 156 and the second in a 230 mesh, then it's going to be too much white and you're not going to get a true gradient when it prints. So what we do is we'll make an underbase and pull these gradients back a little bit on the underbase. That way you'll still get a good solid underbase here where it's solid, but the second stroke on the finer mesh will allow that gradient to lightly stroke onto the garment. So what we'll do, we'll come up here and we'll make us another label, and we're going to call it underbase, UB for underbase. Okay, and then we're going to color that underbase label with the garment, because it doesn't need to print on anything yet, because we're not going to print it on this first print. And then we'll put our number up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever the number of your job is, and this is an adult print, so we'll keep that as AD. Okay, now what you would do is Control Shift S to save, and you would go ahead and give your job a name and save it wherever you're saving your files, and then Control P to print. Now if you're using a RIP, and what a RIP does is It allows you to print a PostScript file to a specific folder on the RIP system. It will pull that PostScript file, it'll run through the RIP, and it will separate all of the colors in that PostScript file on separate plates and print them into an output folder as TIFF files. And then those TIFF files are either sent to a textiler to print on film, or they're sent to, say, the iJets like we use, or the STE that's imaged, or whatever. So a RIP is just invaluable as far as separating your plates. It does it for you automatically, so you can send all colors at once, and it will go ahead and rip them, and you're through. If you're not doing it that way, you can, and that does require a PPD file for whatever RIP you're using. But if not, you can either send it to a printer if you're printing that way, or you can actually save it as a PDF, or however you're doing your art. You probably know what you need to do, but we would just go to print this, and we keep the width of our artboard, keep it in a portrait, visible and print layers, okay, and you don't want to scale anything. Then you go to output, you want to be sure you're in host base separations mode, and then you'll set your emulsion here up right reading. That's what we use, and of course it's going to be an image positive, and we use the 100/1000 resolution. So now you can see here that we don't have any process colors, so we got rid of all those. All we have left is our garment, the black, and our white. So we would deselect our garment, hit save, and then we'll pick whatever folder or wherever we want to send it to. If you're using a RIP, you would save it in the input folder for the RIP, and it would print that PostScript file to that input folder, and then the RIP would take it from there. Okay, so now it's time to make our underbase, since we're going to use an underbase for this gradient. So we'll go up here and go ahead and delete our white color label, click on our underbase, and then double click on our white, label it as underbase, and click OK. Alright, so this next plate we're going to have all of the text, the white and the yin-yang, and that is all going to be 100% underbased. Now the gradient, we'll come down here and click on this section, and we'll go back to our gradient slider, and we'll pick this point here, and we'll just about cut that in half. So we'll go to 60, and then over here, that was at 50. I guess it got changed, so we'll bring that down. Go ahead and bring that down to 30. Okay, then we'll hide that one. We'll come in here and we'll select all the same. We'll cut these down to about 15. Then hide that. Select all the same. We'll bring that down to about half. You just want to bring them down enough to give the white plate plenty of room to print that gradient for you, and then the underbase will only have the darker areas. So we'll bring that down, and that should be good. So we'll go ahead and reveal all that. Okay, and in fact we could even bring this in just a little bit more. It wouldn't hurt anything. It'll just give it a little more subtle. Now you don't want to go too far. If you go too far, then it's not going to look right. But on this design, pretty much that center area is the darkest, so the white plate that we already printed will take up the rest of this gradient. Okay, so we have that done. Then we would hit save. We could put a UB extension on the end of our file name and save it as the underbase. Then we would go back to print, and we would do the same thing, only this time it would print a file that was labeled as underbase. And that would either go through the RIP, or you would send it to your printer, or however it is that you choose to do it. Now, some people, when they have multiple colors, they create a separate file for each color. If you have to do it that way, if that's how you image your screens, if you don't have a RIP, then you may need to save a separate plate for each color. And I'll show you how to do that in a later video. But anyway, that's the basic 101 for color separation for screen printing. We're going to get into a lot of complex stuff as this series goes on. We'll talk about transparencies, color percentages, masks. There's just a whole world of things, spikes. It just goes on and on, things that you might encounter when separating artwork. The more complex the art is, the more things that can come up. So we're gonna go over some neat stuff. So if you're into this, then don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. And if you like the strange, unusual, and bizarre, don't forget to visit the website at oddrandomthoughts.com and be on the lookout for the next video. We'll have some neat stuff coming up. Y'all take care. Bye for now.